name and your position, and thereby revealing why you're here. So we'll start across this way.
Yeah, I'm Zach Milford. I'm with Johnson County Department of Health and Environment. I'm an environmental program manager for on-site septic systems.
Great, great.
Stuart Board, Deputy Chief Engineer for Planning and Development for Jones County as well.
Tom Meyer with the County Manager's Office.
I'm Jay Lexi, the planning director, and I'll just say welcome to everyone as well. Glad to have you today. This is a great group of people, so I appreciate everybody volunteering and being part of it. Roger Mason and all of the planning commission.
Jim East, I'm on the planning commission zoning board, and I'm one of the great people.
Yeah, of course you are. It went without saying, you know, so I didn't say it.
Terry Atwell, I am on Southwest Consolidated Zoning Board, I'm on the Planning Commission, and I am the McCollum Township trustee.
Okay, wait a minute. I want to go all the way to the back. Okay,
Karen Miller, planning. Zoe Brown, planning. I'm an intern.
right. Chris Islet, chairman of the planning commission.
You're also.
Well, yeah, and of course, you didn't have to say it.
That also goes with that. Sean Pendley, Deputy Director of Planning. And as Jay mentioned, we just appreciate everybody being here. Also wanted to let everyone know that this meeting is being recorded on Zoom webinar. It's not an interactive meeting, but we're recording the meeting, so it is available for the public to view. And then also, we'll have this for viewing for anybody who can't be here. We do have one other committee member, Michael Levin, who's not able to be here this afternoon, so he's able to watch this. And one final other note, there are table mics set up around the various tables. If you don't mind turning it on if you're speaking, and then turn it off when you're done so it doesn't pick up the audio.
Yeah, well, let me just say, by way of introduction. I think there are maybe 2 or 3 things in the county that might be as important as development plan in regard to really running the mission plan. I know the SEDO, was.
Yeah, I forgot about it.
Yeah.
I know DeSoto is, annexing or has annexed or, a large chunk of ground. But there's a lot around it that still involves the county and county planning. And so knowing, where the roads need to be and where the infrastructure needs to go and doing that kind of planning is extremely important. And I think there are a couple of other things we could name that are as important, but this is really important. And that's why we have decided to have this subcommittee. And with that, I'll turn it over to Jay.
Thank you, Chris. I don't have a lot to offer either. My introductory comments, having said everything I want to say, just once again, appreciate everybody. And we did something similar to this when we had kind of a subcommittee. We did our development patterns maybe a couple of years ago, I believe, a few years ago. And so once again, appreciate your time today. And I think it's gonna be a great discussion and being part of this group. We have probably maybe 5-6 meetings planned, but we're looking forward to it. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Diane. It's kind of our first speaker.
Well, no.
Or it's gonna be
actually,
Michelle.
I'll leave that.
Oh, Karen, I'm sorry.
Karen, you put your speaker up.
Put my speaker on.
It's not in the lunchbox. Speaker is not in there.
Right here.
So can hear you. Here.
Thank you. All right, so planning staff will have 3 planning staff members give an overview of our planning documents. And so I'm going first with the comprehensive plan. That's the most general plan that we have. And In unincorporated Johnson County, we have three major plans. We have the comprehensive plan, the zoning and subdivision regulations, and then CARNET, the comprehensive arterial road network plan.
Can I ask a question real quick?
Yeah.
Before we get in this, what is our stated goal? What do we plan on doing here? I mean, I know this is up here, but in my
Sure.
own mind. What
And
what
that-
purpose am I looking forward to?
And Michelle is going to talk more about that, but the idea is to, I don't want to steal her thunder, but the idea is because we've had these pretty large annexations, to go back and look at the area plan surrounding the Army ammunition plants. And see what we need to do. Nothing, change it, whatever, so. All right, so, oh, no problem. And the area plan is part of the comprehensive plan. So the comprehensive plan, we have general, really good policies for land use planning, for residential, for agriculture, for non-residential, but there's some areas that are special. And the Stillwell area, that's different. It's got a lot of, older development that popped up around the railroads, 100 years ago. We've got the airports that are special for obvious reasons. And then we have the Army ammunition plant. Back to the general comprehensive plan. The purpose of the comprehensive plan is to set forth those general goals and policies. How do we want to look? How do we want to handle our development? The zoning regulations is that document that takes those ideas in the comp plan and implements them and gives the specific requirements when development comes in. So the comp plan is a guide, it's a recommendation on how you handle development, and the zoning regs is set in stone. This is how you do it. And then the CARNET plan, elements of that are incorporated into both the comp plan and the zoning regs. So for instance, the zoning regulations, we have our various frontage requirements for the various type 1, 2, and 3 CARNETs. And what I did, because the comprehensive plan is so important, and within the comprehensive plan, the land use plan, which is chapter 2, that is so important. I actually gave you guys a copy of chapter 2 today. And my reasoning is not for you to read every single word in this plan, but just so you kind of know the genesis of the concepts that we'll be talking about. Let's see. And so this chapter is organized from for the general kind of basic land use planning principles down to the very specific, where at the end you end up with a future land use map and policy areas. So in chapter 2, which looks like this, if you would turn to page 3 on the second column, it starts with 2.3, the 10-point planning frame, 10-point planning framework. And that condenses all of the big ideas that we have regarding land use. And as we kind of just look at some of these, you'll notice some concepts that you've heard the planners kind of harp on about for years and decades. And this is exactly where it comes from. And everything that the comp plan covers is pretty overwhelming. So I'm just going to kind of focus it to some of the issues that I think that we'll need to think about when we look at the sunflower plant. Now, there's definitely others. You guys might want to pull in some other ideas, but I'll just kind of pick and choose but just so you can see how our comprehensive planning is put together. So the number one below that is continued slow growth in the unincorporated area. So that concept is that if you look at the building permits in all of Johnson County, almost all of them are in the incorporated areas. And in the unincorporated areas, we have growth. So some years we have an uptick, some years we don't. But the majority of the development is in is in incorporated parts of the county. If you'll turn the page and look at page 2-5, number 5 on the first column is limited housing choices. And that's saying that in unincorporated Johnson County, we're a little bit more limited than in the cities. In the cities, they, for the most part, have sewers, and the sewers let you have a lot higher density housing choices. You have the apartments, multifamily, but in the cities also, you can go all the way up to sometimes the estate zoning where you can have 2 or 3 acres for a house. In the unincorporated part, generally there aren't sewers. There's definitely some notable exceptions to those, but generally no sewers. Generally, it's on septic systems, which means that at a minimum, usually if you come in with a new housing development, it's going to have at least 2 acres. And the majority of the zoning in unincorporated Johnson County is rural. If you look at a zoning map, you see a sea of green, and that's the rural zoning district that requires at least 10 acres. So you have the residential zoning, which allows between 2 to up to 10 acres. And then you have the rural zoning, which is 10 acres and more. And, and kind of like I was saying, one of the reasons for that limited housing choices is we just don't have the infrastructure to serve those higher densities, not only the wastewater, but roads, and then the services like sheriffs, schools, that type of thing. If you dramatically increase the density in the county, then you really start stressing those other services. If you turn the page, county city coordination. And so one thing that we've done to move towards county city coordination is we've arranged for the city of DeSoto staff to come in at our next meeting, if it's agreeable with the group, to come speak, and then and they will kind of give us kind of a peek at their plans and what they're thinking. And so, but just in general, I'm just going to read some of this. The objective is to ensure that future growth by cities is orderly, so the extension of future municipal infrastructure and services will be unencumbered and coordinated with the county. So, we don't want to do land use around those fringe areas of the city that will be difficult for them to expand and grow. So this is in our comp plan. This has been here for decades, and that's kind of one of the basic ideas that we follow. Yeah.
When it was announced, DeSoto annexed part of Sunflower, they published a potential.
So when
when Olathe annexed that area and made it public, they, along with that thing, I think it was at the same time, showed a potential growth into that area. Into what their comprehensive plan was for that land. It was mostly laid out with streets and so on and so forth. So my quick question is that as we do this kind of in concrete, their development to the north part of the Sunflower, is that, or shall we ask them that?
So I'll give you a quick answer to that. I've got this. The quick answer to that is that they have that plan adopted. It was adopted last year, but they know that they need to tweak it and work on it. So they plan to relook at that.
Sure.
And, you know, hopefully in the near future, I know they're pretty interested in getting that done as soon as possible.
Thank you.
And then number 8 is public services and utilities coordination. That's why we have environmental here, wastewater here. We've also arranged for public works to come in and discuss some of the issues surrounding public works. And as you know, those people on zoning boards, when we write our staff reports, that's something that we spend a lot of time on, is talking about all of the existing services and how a potential development affects that and interacts with the services. And then transportation, that alludes to the CARNEP. We've spent a lot of time on the CARNEP plan. And then number 10, I want to hit on predictability and public involvement. And this is really important. I'm just going to read it. The county is committed to making development decisions predictable, fair, and cost-effective by encouraging community and stakeholder information sharing, problem solving, and collaboration in the decision-making process. So the planning department for decades has considered this to be a very important part involving members of the community. And this process, we're going to have at least 1 or 2 public involvement sessions. And then also this will culminate in a public hearing in front of the Planning Commission if we have any recommendations for them to act on. And then also we've posted and we'll post all of these subcommittee meetings on the website. The public is welcome to attend and listen. This is, however, your chance to work. So they aren't asked to speak here, but they will have opportunities to speak. So I just wanted to kind of point out that that's how we plan for the public involvement in this. And then at the bottom of that page 2-6, it moves on to a whole different section. So we start out with those general important land use planning principles, and we reduce them into concrete goals, policies, and action steps. I'm not going to go over all of these. There's a lot of them. But the goals are kind of how we want the community to look. The policies are how we implement those goals. And then the action steps are basically kind of, I view them as a to-do list of things to do. And I'm just going to point out like just 2 important goals. Page 2-9 on the second column is coordinated approach to development. The goal is political and service jurisdictions throughout Johnson County have a coordinated and decision-making framework for ensuring the orderly location and orientation of future land uses with adequate public improvements and services. That's what we want. We want coordination. And then I'm just going to point out an important policy, number 4, areas within unincorporated Johnson County that are currently developing or expected to develop near cities should be planned in cooperation with nearby city or cities. So that's just an example of how we make it more concrete. And then if you turn the page to do 2-10, an action step. I like H, to the extent feasible, a proposed development in unincorporated Johnson County near a city should be coordinated with the plans, regulations, and standards of the nearest city. It says coordinated, it doesn't say match. I'll just point that out. So, and then if you turn the page 2-11, another really important goal is availability of public facilities and services. This is really at the forefront of our rezoning considerations and other development considerations. The goal is adequate public facilities and services are available and in place as development occurs and development patterns reflect an efficient, equitable, and effective use of public and private dollars. And then an important policy is number 2, development should be located where public infrastructure like water, sewer, and roads is already adequate or can be most cost effectively extended. You know, so like I said, I'm picking and choosing. I'm thinking that these will be important as we go through and look at the land use. And you know, there's more of these. You're free to just kind of take a look at them. You have these here. And then on page 2-14 are the land use, and this is kind of extensive. I'm not really going to go over these, but those are the land use policies in general, and for residential, for non-residential, and for agricultural. There is one thing I'm going to read. It's page 215, number 8. That's one of the land use policies, and it's proposed development with densities greater than allowed within the designated policy area should be directed to cities or locations within the unincorporated area where there is planned or existing infrastructure to support. So examples, existing sanitary sewer districts, and where such development would not require an upgrade to the existing infrastructure at the county's expense. You know, so that's going to be an important thing. So that is going from just general land use principles to our goals and policies. And then the next area, and I'm not going to really go over everything in it, but we move on to page 2-21, 5.1 is balanced and orderly growth strategy. I'm just gonna let you guys take a look at it because that's a really important thing. But then page 2-24 is the land use planning policy areas. And if you could advance the screen. There's a lot of information on our 3 policy areas and how we consider them and look at them. Our rural traditional planning area, our traditional rural policy area, our rural policy area, and our urban fringe policy area. And we've really spent a lot of time thinking about what that should be. And then we distilled it into a policy area map. So these are our 3 planning areas. The blue is the urban policy area, the yellow is the rural policy area, and the blue and the green is the traditional rural policy area. And the pink are our planning, our special planning areas. And if you could advance the next slide. And you've got this as a handout, so you don't have to read that on the screen. This is a great summary of what we are thinking of when we talk about uses going into all of these 3 policy areas. And I'm just going to highlight kind of the rural policy area and the urban fringe and kind of compare and contrast. The rural policy area is characterized by really not much infrastructure. We don't expect sewers for a long time. And because of that, because of this lack of services, we expect that the general land uses that are appropriate here are agriculture and homes on at least 10 acres. And then also the water service, it could be a well or a cistern, or it could also be some sort of public water source. And compared to the urban fringe policy area, and we consider there's some verbiage in the comp plan, the urban fringe to be about a mile out from the city boundaries. That can be adjusted depending on the context, but just as a start, about a mile from the boundary.
Say that again. That is what?
The urban fringe, the blue.
Give me that definition of urban fringe.
Urban fringe is that area next, close to a city that we expect to develop in more of a quicker time frame, like 10 years or something like that. So that's an area where we expect it to have like water soon, if not already, sewers soon, if not already, that the cities will be, kind of growing out in that area. And so that some of the higher density residential areas are more appropriate in this area by our definition. So if there's adequate infrastructure in the urban fringe policy area, those residential zoning districts could be appropriate, like, and depending on the city's plans, depending on, what their future land use says, depending on existing infrastructure. So there's an alternate density called for between like 2 and 10 acres, if it's appropriate.
I understood from some of the things we've had in the past that
It is on.
it's on
Yeah, if you just turn it on.
It's on.
screen. Is that 20 years was normal. I'm thinking about like when we talked about some things out the west sides.
Like the prudent planning. Well, there's the.
I mean,
20-year
that planning it was always like 20 years.
That, 20 years is one of our benchmarks. That's called our prudent planning.
So when did it go from 20 years to 10 years in your planning here? That's what I'm asking.
I don't think things have changed. I think maybe we might need to talk offline to make sure we're thinking about the right thing. But that urban fringe, we think that if things are developing more quickly in the urban fringe, and we can like set aside those dates. It's just this is the area where we're expecting some development,
Okay.
and sooner than later.
Okay.
Excuse me, Karen, this is Sean. I just wanted to mention, I forgot to mention this at the beginning of the meeting. We have kind of a hard stop here for this meeting at 1:30 today. So we'll have time for discussion, but we want to make sure that we're going through the presentation so we can go through all the slides. But you're welcome to ask questions or any comments as we go, but just wanted to set everybody a reminder of 1:30. So we'll
So have I gone over 10? Yeah,
we're right
okay.
about time here. I think we're ready to move on.
So I'll put a stop at that, and I'll just point out one thing is that starting on, so page 2-35 is that chart, so you can look at it. And then 2-36 is we've put in the solar stuff, and we won't take time to talk about it, but I'll let you take a look at it. And what you can do is look, and now that we've talked about the comp plans, policies and stuff, you can look how when we wrote solar stuff, I looked at all of our policies for general land use and carried it over to solar. So thank you.
One thing I was going to mention, everybody, and I meant to say this during initial comments is today really is an overview, a high level overview of all of our planning documents, our major documents. So, and you probably figured that out as you're kind of looking at the agenda. But then each subsequent meeting will have more detailed topics. Like next month, we're gonna have Public Works speak to the group. We'll have wastewater, environmental speak to the group. The City of DeSoto, as we go into more detail on these topics. So what I would say today is it's kind of the high level overview. And then we can, we're going to kind of continue to narrow down the focus, and then we'll get more into the actual, the sunflower area. And as we start to look at that. So.
Yeah, thanks, Jay. Those were good comments. I'm gonna kind of do the next step here, but I wanted to just point out the handouts just so people kind of know what they are. So there's obviously the agenda, so you can kind of keep track of where we're headed here. And then we'll talk about this a little bit later, but the proposed topics and meeting schedule. And then this is part of what Karen was talking about. So this is our rural comprehensive brochure. It's got those, that 10-point framework planning principles in it. And then her chapter 2 of the land use plan. And then there's a copy of, which is what I'm getting ready to talk about, this, the current sunflower area plan. And then also this is a copy of the policy area map that we have up, that it might be good for you to kind of take home and have that as well. So I just kind of wanted to go through those handouts so that you kind of knew what we were doing.
And can I just add one thing? This brochure is really great. It is a great summary of chapter 2 because it has the Carnet plan superimposed on the policy area map. It's if in the middle, like Diane said, are that 10-point planning framework, those big picture land use issues. On the back, the first column is the planning goals. We talked about the goals, policies, and action steps. Those are all of the goals. And on the second column is a description of the purpose of all of the policy areas. So this is a great thing to take to meetings. It's a great summary.
So kind of what Karen summarized earlier, and part of kind of what Jim was asking about, our goal is, so for today, what we're really trying to do is to talk about the rural comprehensive plan in a broad spectrum. And then we're kind of funneling down. So Karen talked about the general principles of our comprehensive plan, our rural policy areas. And then I'm going to talk about the area plan that we're here to discuss over these several meetings and possibly update it. And then we kind of even get further in, and then Michelle's going to talk about DeSoto's annexation and how that affects the sunflower plan, and that's kind of why we're here for the subcommittee. So, I just kind of wanted to make sure we're connecting the dots here. So this handout here that says conceptual land use plan for the Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant area. So this is an area plan of our rural comprehensive plan. It was adopted in 1998, which is about 24 years ago, I think, if I can do my math correctly. And so why this plan got created, kind of the background is that the United States GSA, General Services Administration, in conjunction with the United States Army, was completing a review process to eventually lead to the disposal of the Army plant property. So the plan was at the time was to develop this plan to exercise some control over the disposal and to establish some policies and guidelines for the redevelopment of the sunflower site. And two key issues at the time for controlling future development at that time was to have a future land use plan, and then also kind of what methods were available to the state and to the county to implement and guide redevelopment of this area. So the plant site covers about 9,000 acres, which is about 14 square miles. And so this site kind of offered a unique opportunity to try to create a community in a single planned development. And so as you read through this plan, it's kind of based on this planned community concept. And so some of those objectives of this plan, and you can see these on the screen here, actually, what's interesting is some of these objectives are still relevant today. Still wanting to minimize the impact of development on surrounding properties, whether that development is within the city of DeSoto or out in the county. That's still very relevant. And then also to establish land uses that are compatible with the existing infrastructure and existing comprehensive plans, specifically with, obviously with the city of DeSoto, including the K-10 corridor plan. But it was with an emphasis upon high-tech research industries and business center uses. So that's still very relevant. And actually what they're doing at the Panasonic plant is very high-tech. So I find that interesting that we're still kind of in that circle of what they're thinking this area might be used for. And in this document, I saw that they were talking about one of the first businesses that they wanted to locate there was for microchips. So there's some, I can't think of the word, but forecasting of kind of what would be coming. So I found that pretty interesting as well. And then also just to continue to provide green space, but then also as a buffer for surrounding properties. So they kind of called this central theme community in a park. And Michelle, if you can scroll down. So this plan is also in your paper copy. So this is kind of the future land use plan that was set forth for the sunflower plant area. And about 3,400 acres of it was green space and was defined parkland uses that were kind of woven throughout the site and connecting the property. The plan also had a substantial portion designated for residential use, also for light industrial uses that would be near the center of the development. And then also kind of a town center area that they proposed that would kind of serve as a location for schools, churches, government offices, that kind of thing. And then the remaining area was designated for a business center or kind of highway commercial uses. And so that's kind of the general layout, different concept land uses that they had proposed. And these land uses were also coordinated with City of DeSoto at the time. So Michelle, if you can go to the next screen. So when they did the proposed land uses, so they have proposed land uses within the sunflower site, which are the different uses that I just talked about. But then they also had uses designated outside that are just kind of surrounding the plant area. And those are kind of retail, commercial, residential mixed use to the north, low density residential to the east, and then rural residential to the west side. So this is just kind of a list of the descriptions of what those proposed land uses were going to be. So part of the implementation that they thought was going to happen at the time was to this planned community concept was to allow for redevelopment of the sunflower site as one comprehensive development. That was really kind of the goal of the plan. And it also had some linkages, if you want to go back to the map, some linkages throughout the development to connect parks, parkland, and then also some pedestrian and bicycle pathways. So, and then also part of the implementation of the plan that you'll read was dependent on a couple of factors. One was to complete a plan for the environmental cleanup, the remediation of the cleanup, and then also to establish a redevelopment district for the property. And of course, that's done because Sunflower Redevelopment LLC corporation now owns that property. So that piece has been accomplished. So that's kind of a pretty quick summary of this Sunflower plan. You know, very conceptual, but they wanted to get something on paper to have over time, just to kind of be able to plan for the area. So, so kind of now that we've talked about the rural comprehensive plan more broadly, we've talked about, so this is the plan. So now Michelle's going to talk about this plan in relationship to DeSoto's annexation and the impact that it has on this plan, and is kind of the whole reason why we're here. So I think.
But before we move on, can I just say one thing? So if you look at that, and Michelle's going to look at the annexation, you'll see what's left is on the east side. There's low density residential land uses called for. On page 9, there's a description of those densities. If public sewers are available, 3 to 4 dwelling units per acre. Public sewers are not available, 1 dwelling unit per 2 acres to 1 dwelling unit per 10 acres. That's on page 9 at kind of the bottom. And then on the west side is low density residential. West side is rural residential, depending on the availability of adequate infrastructure, 1 dwelling unit per 10 to 1 dwelling unit per 3 acres. So the rural residential is very similar to our urban fringe policy area right now, except instead of 3 acres, we say 2 acres. And on the east side, they are considering allowing maybe a little bit more dense. So in terms of moving forward, thinking about those policy areas that we might want to assign, we can be comparing what I think should be there now to what is called for there in the existing plan.
Yeah, that's good. And so Michelle's gonna kind of delve into more of that detail. So Michelle, you can.
Okay, so I'm going to go through today, basically. So this planning area was done, or this concept plan was done about 24 years ago. We talked about 20 years is kind of your time frame. So this is really pretty out of date. The entire planning area that you see that is in colors, about 28,500 acres. This significantly large area plan. Be my own tech person here. This is so this is basically the why we're looking at this. This shows the annexation area of DeSoto, the annexation that happened the beginning of this year. That was about 6,300 plus acres. And then there's a proposed annexation to the south of that is in the works. That's about 2,800 acres. So that whole area is roughly just over 9,000 acres. If you put that into perspective, that's about 1/3 of our planning area. So 1/3 of that planning area is within the city of DeSoto, no longer within unincorporated Johnson County. So, I mean, that takes a significant amount out of our planning area. Can you go to the next one?
I've got quick, I'm having a hard time reading. So the circle, the hash circle. That's 127th Street is the southern boundary that they annexed, right?
The red square.
Yeah, to the
That's-
bottom, that's 127th Street on the south.
Yes.
I can't barely, and then below that, as that says. Proposed annexation. So
Yes,
is that proposed annexation in the process?
yes. It was initiated by the city of DeSoto. We've been notified. It's set to go to the city for formal action early November.
Okay, so then that would be their second annexation.
Yes,
The first one was latter part of last year,
yes,
and then this is, so that total of the 9,000 some acres, if that passes and goes through, they will then have annexed how much?
over 9,000 acres.
So they will have done the whole thing. In effect, does that propose the rest of the,
That is correct. The Sunflower redevelopment has approached the city and petitioned for annexation of the remainder of the Sunflower area, with the exception of the K-State property. There is still some property you may have seen on that previous
yeah.
map for the Sunflower. The K-State property is the only property that will remain that's not in the city. All of the rest of the land, if this goes through the future pending annexation, that will be all of the remainder of the Sunflower property.
Hey, Michelle, can you get us a copy of that map that you have
You
up
bet.
there? Thank you.
That one. Apparently my maps are secret, so.
And we, at the next committee meeting, we will have the city of DeSoto here as well, and they'll be sharing with us at that time. We expect the approved full annexation of all of that land, but they'll be bringing that to the next committee meeting.
okay, so that's going to be gone.
So go ahead and scroll down, Diane. So this is those last two maps combined. You have the grayed out city of DeSoto that they have annexed right in the middle. And then on the bottom, that kind of dash line surrounds the area that they're looking at. So it doesn't leave a whole lot left that is unincorporated. It's about 19,000 acres. And then 900 of that's left is Kill Creek Park. That's a significant amount, and that's the green area on the east. And then, as you can see, there's floodplain and street right of way. So really, we have half the planning area that we used to have. And so that's why we are moving forward with looking at this plan again. The Sunflower plan, again, the plant is no longer within the unincorporated county. And DeSoto is working on updating their comprehensive plan specifically for those areas that they have annexed this year, both what is currently and what's coming. So they're working on that. Like Sean said, we will hear more about that from the city at the next meeting. They'll give us an update of how far they are in the process and maybe share some drafts that they have. And then another reason for updating this plan, Diane, can you go to the next one? Is that since DeSoto is moving into that sunflower plant area, they're extending utilities. This is a future, can you zoom in a little bit? This is a future sewer plan from the city. As you can see, they're extending those facilities further south. They already have the treatment plant in the middle of Sunflower. And so really by spreading out those city services, that again is opening up more area for development.
The whole thing, thank you.
We'll email out the PowerPoint
Yeah, this,
or the PDF,
I
so.
think we'll post.
Michelle, can I ask you a question too? The turquoise area, or blue, whatever you want to call it, that is the Flint property, is that
It is.
correct? Okay, they're
Yeah.
currently,
So they annexed that triangle along with that large sunflower area in the beginning of the year. So if you see signs out along there for Flint Industrial Park, that's what they're talking about. So really what the task of the committee is doing is to look at that future land use map, consider what remains, consider all these new details. I mean, these are fresh details within the last year. And, you know, we need to look at the current plan and see if that is still appropriate. We have options to change it if it needs to be changed. We have options to say it's just completely irrelevant and bring everything into this map and make it look more like what we see around Spring Hill and Gardner, to simplify it. But that's what we're here to do. We're to decide what needs to be changed with the plan and if anything is still relevant.
Michelle, I have one more question for you. So the area south of 143rd Street, is that the area that the city of Gardner is looking at possibly annexing in the future as well? Is that part of their growth?
This is Sean. I could just mention that the city of Gardner does have an expectation to continue annexing to the north to 140.
143rd,
I
okay.
don't know what, if there's a timeline, but that is there. Yeah, I mean, in a just general areas, as development occurs, you know, it'd be voluntary annexations. These would be if and when their growth area, they anticipate to go to 143rd.
Okay.
I would also mention, we're probably gonna move on to the next topic. Diane's gonna talk about the future topics. And so we wanted to get into that discussion with general comments. And at these future meetings, as Diane will mention, we'll have different departments and different agencies coming, City of DeSoto. But Stuart, since you had mentioned a question, I wanted to know about this map. Did you have any comments about this plan for the infrastructure or any other thoughts?
Why is it you don't have structure in that area? They can't have that other meeting necessarily, but I was just curious as to where so it was and where it might be.
Yeah.
Yep. So we're gonna go on here on the agenda just to talk about future meeting topics real quick, and then we'll have a short discussion. What time is that? 1:11. Yeah, we're in pretty good shape. And then we'll talk about this, setting the schedule for future meetings. So you also have this handout. It's called Sunflower Area Plan Update, Proposed Topics and Meeting Schedule. So so this is just to kind of talk about the process of the subcommittee and kind of what the process that staff is proposing, which is similar to the process that we did for the arterial lot review and regulation updates. So if you look at this sheet, so obviously we're done with the first meeting. So the second meeting, we're thinking that we would have presentations by City of DeSoto staff. They'll come in, share their plans, kind of what their growth areas are, their infrastructure plans, that kind of information. And then we'll also have Johnson County Public Works come, and they'll speak about kind of transportation and road issues, and then as well as the Carnip plan and how that affects this plan, and if we need to be kind of looking at our Carnip plan as well.
Okay,
So then,
I've got a question.
yep,
Our thing here says update the 98 Sunflower Army Ammunition Plant Area Plan. So when we go look at all this stuff, the question I have is, seeing how the ammunition plant is gone, what area are we going to be contemplating? Geographical area?
Yeah. So, and anybody else can chime in, but so really it's going to be, you know,
They're
just-
going to 143rd Street, right?
Mhm.
Okay, so the charge that we've got here is Sunflower Army Ammunition Plan. So apparently that charge has changed to exactly what?
Yeah, so, and we were gonna get into this discussion, but I think the idea is that, so now that this plan is, this area has been annexed, right? So we no longer have any planning jurisdiction. But where focus is the area that's surrounding what they just, the areas that they just annexed. And to update or see if the land uses, yeah, so Michelle's kind of showing that area.
She say.
Yeah,
So.
Yeah, if I could, Jim, I think what I know what he's asking, the extent is basically everything that will not be in the city of DeSoto from Waverly Road west to County Line Road. And then as far south as what, just about a half mile south of 143rd Street. So it's going to be
Yeah.
only that perimeter pretty much around this that's in the unincorporated. That will be the scope of the study. So basically everything you see in the extent, what then is not within DeSoto, if that makes sense.
yeah, and like Michelle, you know, mentioned earlier, you know, one of the conversations I think and discussion we'll have as a group is, you know, are we updating this plan? Is it going to go away? And then are we then just, you know, this pink area is going to go away, right? And then are we just thinking now then about looking at the periphery, the perimeter of that area that's still out in the county? And, you know, would we maybe go back and establish one of our existing policy areas kind of around that perimeter? So that's kind of the discussion. And so that's kind of what we mean by update, but.
So in other words, there's choices, you know, do you want is it appropriate to have an area plan to continue for, you know, because we had the area plan and then a cookie cutter came in and took out a chunk in the middle and left a fringe of stuff. So do we want to have some special land use categories, or would it be appropriate to perhaps return those land use categories on that fringe to something, to policy areas we already have established, meaning urban fringe, the rural policy area or rural traditional. So those are questions. We just know that the pink area here needs to be updated. So do we want to keep a pink area, you know, with that grade in the middle, that's the city of DeSoto? Or do you want to go to regular?
The other thing I was going to mention is that the pink area, the city of DeSoto, the area they have annexed, you know, they have, I think, if I recall, I think Panasonic there's essentially 600 acres there that they're going to be developing for that project. But then there's also, you know, significant amounts of land that won't be industrial, that the city of DeSoto will also doing some land planning. So we get some updates on that, but I think we need to ensure that the area around their existing annexed area is complementary or consistent of our land uses as well, and vice versa. So I think they've got a significant portion of that area that will be housing as well as industrial. So that's where it'll be, you know, as to Karen's point about whether it's a urban fringe area or something similar to that might be something we might want to contemplate as we move forward. But we do have some choices in terms of how we put this together.
And that's a good segue. Thank you, Jay. And so the idea with this meeting schedule is having these different county departments come in, give us information so that we're kind of have updated information from, wastewater, environmental, public works, parks and rec. And then that gives us kind of the framework, and we have all this information to then drill down. So then as you see, kind of the 4th, 5th and 6th meetings, then are going to be discussions here with this group about, you'll be coming up with, proposed alternatives and recommendations of what we think we want to do with this plan. And just so that very question, Jim, that's the sole purpose of us being here is we got to figure out what we want to do. And I don't know, Chris, if you have anything to add to that, but so that's kind of the idea of that process. And then we'll end up with a recommendation that then goes back to the full planning commission. And then we'll also have some public meetings to get some input from the public as we go through this. You want to make some comments, Chris? Or?
No, I think the plan generally is a good plan. It may have to be modified as we go along. I do want to make a suggestion of the possibility of having a tour of the area. We have done this in the past with like the BNSF and some other areas where members of the planning commission and planning department either drove out there. Actually, what I'd really like to do is get a helicopter flight over
Yeah, no, thanks.
the entire area.
Helicopter flight.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, hey, we're just making suggestions here. But I do think it would be helpful to me. There are certain parts of the county I know intimately, and there are others, and this included, where I'm pretty vague. Crew's going to drive.
So did you say, I'm sorry, I was just kind of a tour of this area?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a good idea, Chris. I would certainly, we can do that. One thing we want to make sure is we make that available to all of the committee members. And so we will, maybe we can look into a van possibly. We've done that before, I believe, tours. That's a really good idea. I will tell you, when we first started looking at this area, we had a chance meeting with Dean Palos, who you all may remember, the former director of planning. He did kind of give us an update of some area, some of the history of the Sunflower area, things that I know I didn't know, and I really appreciated that. And even I know maybe Diane and Karen probably appreciated going back out to the site, because it has been a number of years, and it is helpful to at least drive around the perimeter of the overall Sunflower area. That's a good idea. I think we could see if we could arrange that kind of a tour of the area.
So kind of as we wrap up, just kind of a couple of last things. If there's any initial other thoughts or more information that you think you need or want, or other kind of initial thoughts, we can spend a couple minutes getting that down. We can capture that. And then maybe we can do that now, and then we'll talk about what I'm hoping to do is set at least the next 3 meeting dates, and those are on your agenda. So maybe if anybody else has any other things they want to capture.
Is so happening or they're working on them?
Just their future land use plan. They are currently working on an update to their future land use plan. And so they'll talk more about that at the next meeting. Yeah, they're just starting that. They do have a future land use plan that does cover most of this area, that their future growth area around the Sunflower property, but they're updating it. As Jay mentioned, they're working on that as a result of some of the proposals that they have right now with Panasonic and other, you've seen some of the other sites that they're grading up along the interchange near
The problem that they're having too is it's the same thing we've discussed. It's just changing so rapidly and quickly. So everybody's trying to kind of scrambling here, trying to figure out how to plan this.
Seems like to me that
It seems like to me that the plan, that current plan of whatever that's going to be a year from now, I don't know, for the city of DeSoto is really going to drive what's going to be in that little section out there as ours, because if they develop more rapidly than we do coming up from the south, all of our development is going to be, is really, if they don't annex it, by the way, is going to be married onto what their, their streets or stubs or sewers or everything else. So they're really driving that little section we're looking at. I mean, we can call it anything we want to, but really that they're driving the future growth as far as utilities and stuff, I would think. And the utilities and is what's going to drive growth as far as residential or what have you. Yeah. So, I mean, I guess my point is hearing from them what their current ideas is really a driver on what we're going to consider. I don't think
Yeah.
I'm thinking.
No, yeah, I think that's a good point. And so actually, they're going to be the focus of the second meeting, as well as Public Works. So we thought having them right off the bat was a good idea. I think, yeah, you're correct for that very reason. So. Yeah. Yep. Agreed. Any other initial thoughts or information, maps you think you might want that we can start working on?
No, these are great.
Any other speakers that you would like to
And
request?
maybe, yeah, maybe look at that list of who we think we're going to look at. And if you have other thoughts, you can email us if you think of another group you want to invite that we don't have on this list. Take that home, look at it. You can email us and we can kind of get coordinated on that. And then also, so if you can go back to your agenda real quick. So you see down at the bottom, it says set schedule for future meetings. So do these Friday afternoons, 12 to 1:30, providing lunch, does that kind of work for most people?
Does it have to be on a Friday?
Huh?
Does it have to be on a Friday?
Some of us work 5 days, Jim.
No, but a half an hour extra long one. What are you talking about? I work.
So you'll notice on the agenda, I've got 3 dates here. Proposing that the next dates, meetings December 9th, January 6th, and January 27th. So if you can look at your calendars, I think what I'll do is I'll just send out an email to everybody and give you that list of dates, although just again, and if you can kind of reply pretty quickly so that we can at least get this room, especially for the December meeting. But we thought it'd be good if we could go ahead and at least get 3 meeting dates going, so it's on your calendar and we can keep moving along with the process.
Jim, would you prefer if it wasn't a Friday? Would you prefer if it wasn't a Friday?
I'm just asking, does it have to be on a Friday? A lot of people, especially this next month or so, are going to be history on Friday because they're going to go see.
And that's why that
Yeah.
December date's pretty early in December, and then we weren't planning on doing anything else in December. Yeah, because of the
Okay.
holidays.
Our one issue we have, Friday is a good day around here. Just because, but it doesn't, if other days work, Thursdays are terrible just because the board meets, Wednesdays. There's a lot of things going on Wednesdays. A Monday or Tuesday might be an option, but
Friday's all right.
okay.
Jay, Chris, John, anybody have any last thoughts?
I have somebody that I think always gets overlooked when we're looking at changing things and the city's change thing, would be somebody from the farming community. Because things always get changed that affect them and we don't know about it until they're already done and changed.
Okay.
So I would suggest we get somebody. I'm not a farmer, so I don't know what
Would like the
directly is going to affect them.
Extension, like somebody from the extension office, would
Or
that
are
be
you talking
good?
about actual farmers? out in
Like
the
an
area?
actual farmer who has farm ground in the area that farms over there that has to get equipment in and out. Because anything that you do with roads is going to affect how they get in and out.
I was just gonna suggest, Terry, one other thing, if we aren't able to get anybody to represent the farming community to come to one of these specific committee meetings, we will also definitely have at least 1 or 2 public information meetings. It'd be good, of course, if they could join specifically a committee meeting, but if they can't, we'll make sure that when we do the outreach to the public, that we can include some of those representatives that might be helpful for that.
And if you've got anybody in particular in mind, let us know. But we can think about that. We can maybe even ask the Northwest and Southwest zoning boards, see if they have some ideas about that. Specifically for outreach to the farming community. Yeah, that's a good point.
Roger Mason here. I have a question. Would it be possible to look at the surrounding area that we're talking about, what still is unaffected by the annexations? We typically have some defined area that we call our fringe area. If we superimpose that on Ames could probably do that, of course, pretty easy. Superimpose that on there, that would then show us what we really have to look at. If that's not too much trouble for them to do, that would be nice. And maybe even have it here so those guys next time from DeSoto could see what we're dealing with. They could probably do that pretty easily.
I would suggest, Roger, I think Ames does have a layer for future growth area, which was based on annexation agreements, which unfortunately are no longer worth much more than the paper that they're printed on. The state, there's been some disagreement over the city annexation agreements, but we may still have, at least we could coordinate with the cities to get what their planning areas are and their growth areas. Certainly, I think we could add that.
I think what you're asking for is a map that takes the recent Overland Park annexation and put like a mile urban fringe area around it.
It's not like you did for the solar deal. You showed that like what, a mile, half mile.
Mhm. Yeah, so just a mile buffer from the, yeah, we definitely can do that.
So showing like a 1 mile out from city of DeSoto boundaries, is that what you're? Okay. Okay. All right, well, we're at 1:30. If there's anything else, last minute, anything, no? Well, appreciate all your information, questions. Thanks for coming and we'll see you
Hey,
on December 9th. Go ahead and mark your calendar.
quick question, everybody, about Jason's Deli. Do you all like that or does that work well? It's good. It seems like it's